Over to
share my
you. Thank you.
thank you. Let me just share my screen here. Can everyone see that? Okay.
Not yet. It's a black screen so far.
All right. Well, that is not. How about now?
Still not yet. We still have a black screen.
Okay. Hold on
Oh,
just a minute.
now we're seeing your desktop.
Okay. Well, that's not good.
We'll give you another try, and if not, I do have it loaded up next to me. And Dr. Michaelman, if we can ask you to turn your camera off just so, and there's a couple other who have their cameras on also, we get a better recording quality if you can turn that off. You just go up to the top right corner and you can click camera and it'll put a line through that.
All right. I'm going to ask for some help.
Uh,
For some
um,
reason, I'm just getting my BayCare screen right now.
all right, let me start the slideshow and you just tell me when you need to move the slide.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're very
So
welcome.
we can go ahead to the next slide, please. So thank you so much, Jean Marie, for inviting me today, and I'm really excited to be here with you. I've been a family physician for many, many years. I've been here with BayCare for about 3.5 years, and gut health is one of those areas that is just fascinating to me. There's so much that we learn about medicine year after year, and this is an area that has really come into play as being very, very important to our overall well-being and health over the past 10 years. So it's just pretty amazing what our bodies can do. Next slide, please. So why is the human body so amazing? Well, did you know that there are 30 trillion cells that make up your body? In addition to that, we have 40 trillion bacteria that are in and on our bodies. Some in our skin, but most of this is in our gut. It's in an area of the gut called the cecum, which is sort of a big pouch in the large intestine. And in our guts, we have about 1,000 species of bacteria that make up our microbiome. And these thousands of bacteria are there along with their genes and also with fungi and viruses. And this creates a microenvironment that is very important to the ability for us to ingest and break down food and be able to use that in a way that supports our body the best. Next slide, please. So how does that happen? How do we get all these bacteria into our bodies? We are born with, they think
Oh,
some,
sorry.
and that as we grow, even at the very early age when we're breastfeeding, we're building our microbiome by taking in a variety of different foods and a variety of different bacteria. And this helps us grow both the number and the different types of bacteria within our own microbiome. And so it's very unique and very specific to the foods that we eat and the variety of foods that we eat throughout our lifetime. And this allows for us to have both a mix of what's considered to be good or better bacteria and bad or less helpful bacteria. And it's not so much that you have one or the other, it's really about the mix of those things. So balance together is very important. And this microenvironment of bacteria and fungi and viruses within our gastrointestinal system functions like an extra organ for our body. And some have even called it the second brain. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. If the balance is really in a good place, then that impacts our health and wellness and makes it more of a positive impact for us. If we eat a lot of processed foods, high fatty foods, a lot of sugar, that can lead to more unhealthy or unhelpful bad bacteria, which then can impact our bodies in a less helpful way than the good bacteria, which comes from eating foods that are high in complex carbohydrates and fruits and vegetables and whole grains, and more of a plant-based diet. So when your mother told you that you are what you eat, she wasn't kidding you. And when she told you to eat all your vegetables, she was really good about making sure that you were getting the healthy things into your body that your body needs in order to have that good microbiome or microenvironment to help you keep yourself well. Next slide. So again, it's all about keeping the bacteria and their genes in balance. Some bacteria can actually break down foods such as fiber. Human beings can't break down fiber, but bacteria can. So by having some of these better bacteria in our bodies, they can digest down the fiber, and that leads us to feeling more full and using certain nutrients into our bodies. We are allowed to break those nutrients down, break down sugars, break down carbohydrates in a way that helps us to absorb those nutrients better and keep the bad bacteria in check. Now, when the bad bacteria or less helpful bacteria tend to outgrow the better or good bacteria, this can lead to an imbalance. And this imbalance is called dysbiosis. When this happens, this can lead to weight gain and impact a lot of different organs in our bodies. Next slide, please. So let's spend a little bit of time around that. Why does gut health matter so much? Well, it impacts your brain and your mental well-being, your metabolic health and your weight, your heart health, and most importantly, your immune system. So let's talk about that a little bit more. As I mentioned earlier, some people call the microbiome basically a second brain. And you would say, why is that? Why would our guts and our brains be connected? Well, for one thing, you have a vagus nerve that actually directly connects your gastrointestinal system to your brain. And so your brain and your gastrointestinal system are sending messages to one another all the time. They're communicating. So when you're breaking down healthy foods and you're eating healthy things and your bacteria are in good balance, good messages get sent up to the brain saying, hey, everything's good here, which increases your serotonin. It has impacts on the different neurochemicals that are actually released in your brain. Those neurochemicals like serotonin and dopamine help you feel better, content, happy. When serotonin and dopamine levels get lower, that can lead to depression, anxiety, and difficulty with sleeping. So the gut health has a real big impact on the brain and your mental well-being. In addition to that, your body takes in fats and nutrients that help to keep the brain functioning healthily. The brain needs fat, but it doesn't want just any kind of fat. The brain wants healthy fats, fats that you get from things like olive oil and avocados and omega-3 fatty acids that you get from foods like fish, such as salmon, fatty fish, and also from chia seeds and flaxseed. Those healthy fats help to keep the brain functioning by making the communication system in the brain work even better so that the chemicals can be transferred much more easily from cell to cell throughout the brain and then send messages back to our body to keep us moving and doing the things that we need to. And as I mentioned, keeping those chemicals in our brain at really good levels to keep our mental health well. How about our immune system? Well, as I mentioned, there are certain bacteria that are good bacteria, for example, Privotella. These help to break down and digest fiber and carbohydrates. When you break down these carbohydrates and fibers, it helps to keep our immune system better by reducing the amount of inflammation in our bodies. And it also is really important for you to know that in our gastrointestinal system, we have a large amount of lymphoid tissue. This lymphoid tissue is actually part of your immune system. So by eating healthy things and getting the right nutrients into our body, decreasing inflammation and getting a good breakdown of those nutrients by our good bacteria, it helps our immune system to function better. Now, some bacteria are not so good or less helpful. Some bacteria create what we call lipopolysaccharides. These lipopolysaccharides can lead to inflammation. When there's inflammation in the system, that's not good, right? That can lead to things like eczema, joint pain, autoimmune disorders, impact our thyroid system, etc. In addition, if our guts are not healthy, you can get what's sometimes referred to as a leaky gut. Now, in this situation, again, the right bacteria are not there to break down certain types of the foods that we eat. And in that situation, larger of the proteins get into the bloodstream. So instead of getting down to those really small building blocks that are so important for us to be able to absorb into our bloodstream and into our cells so that we can use them to power our whole bodies, the larger proteins get placed into the bloodstream and are seen as being foreign. So if something is seen in your body as being foreign, like a virus like COVID or other bacteria like strep throat, then your body will mount an immune response to that. And if these proteins are coming in all the time, the immune system gets revved up. When the immune system gets revved up and is trying to fight all the time to reduce those foreign bodies in your system, then it can lead to some fatigue of that immune system. So it's not as healthy and it's not as there and ready to respond when you are facing something like a COVID infection or a flu infection or a bacterial infection of some type. And again, if that overactive immune system is going on, it can lead to that inflammation, which again can lead to eczema and symptoms like joint pain, muscle aching, and just poor health in general. How about metabolic health? Well, as I mentioned, those good bacteria that break down those starches and those carbohydrates and that fiber that our bodies otherwise can't break down. That all leads to us having a sense of fullness and can also send messages up to our brain to say that we're feeling full and letting us know that everything is okay with our gut and that we're getting those building blocks down to the right size so that we can get them into our system and absorb those sugars at the right level into our cells. If there is more inflammation in the system, either through those lipopolysaccharides that are getting created or other bacteria that are not so helpful for us, that can result in insulin resistance and really impact our metabolic health. So when the insulin is resistance, then you're not taking the sugar and getting it into the cell the way that you need to power up that cell. The sugar instead stays in the bloodstream. And if the sugar is seen in the bloodstream, then that can lead to prediabetes or diabetes down the road. So again, a good healthy gut with the right balance of bacteria can help us by reducing our inflammation and reducing our insulin resistance and actually reducing our likelihood or potential for things like diabetes. This also impacts our weight because when those messages go up to the brain and they say, hey, we're feeling full today, chemicals get released in our brain then to say, we don't need any more food. We're not going to eat any more food. And so people who have high fiber diets with good bacteria that can break those fibers down, that fiber down in those complex carbohydrates, can send those messages then up to our brain. And our brain will say, I'm full. I don't need any more food, and can actually lead to more weight loss or weight gain in certain individuals. Because again, those chemicals that go up to the brain, if there's too many of one type versus the other, the less helpful bacteria producing chemicals versus good bacteria producing chemicals to the brain, it can actually cause people to eat more or have less ability to lose weight, even when they try to eat right. In fact, there's a bacteria called Bacteroidetes, which is higher in people who eat a lot of fat and a lot of animal protein. That group of people in certain studies have shown that because of that particular bacteria being high, they have a harder time, even with the same diet, than someone who doesn't have that same level of bacteria, that particular bacteria. And so the bacteria that you have in your microbiome can actually make it easier or less easier to lose or gain weight. How about heart health? Well, if we're eating the right kinds of fat, then we're going to have better cholesterol, like a lower cholesterol, and we're going to have a better balance of the good and the bad cholesterol. The HDLs are the good cholesterol, LDLs are the less good cholesterol. If you're eating a healthy diet high in fiber, lots of complex carbohydrates, fruits and vegetables, lower in fats, or at least the unhealthy animal fats, then your body will have decreased inflammation, have a better microbiome. And because that inflammation is reduced and that cholesterol is reduced, you'll have a healthier heart. So even when your cholesterol is reduced, if your inflammation is high, still puts you at risk for heart disease because of that inflammation. That's where stress really plays an important part as well in our microbiome. The more stress that we have really can lead to more inflammation. So if we're not getting sleep, we're not eating the proper kind of diet, and then we're stressed out all the time, the chemicals in our brain and the chemicals in our body can actually lead to more inflammation. And this can impact our health and our hearts, even if we're eating a healthy, as far as eating a healthy diet, as far as cholesterol goes, or your cholesterol levels are normal. So all of these areas get impacted simply by the foods that we eat and the microbiome that we created over our lifetime. I'm going to stop there and just ask if anyone has any questions at this point.
Clicked the wrong button. There is nothing in the
The chat
chat
for
yet, but I love
okay.
how you talked about that. And I think the point that you hit home so beautifully is everything is interconnected. Nothing works in
Mhm.
isolation. And when you understand how it influences everything else, as you're trying to move forward and become healthier, figure out the easiest path for you to walk through the door. But then you're supposed to, then that's going to influence so many other places and let you kind of improve your total overall
Mhm.
wellness. So now we have
Great.
two questions. I knew if I said something, someone would type something. Is there
Yes.
Are there supplements that help to support the microbiome, that prebiotic, probiotic kind of situations?
Yeah, the prebiotics are what you eat. So if you're eating less processed food, less sugar, and you're focusing more on a plant-based diet, high in vegetables, leafy green vegetables, lots of fruits, a very colorful diet, those will give you the building blocks that you need. Those will give you they'll basically be the prebiotics, okay? So they'll give you what you need, and the bacteria are all in there. So you'll get the right things if you're eating the right diet. Now, sometimes, if we go to the next slide, I think that this speaks to some of this. Sometimes we're on medications or we're stressed or we're not eating that good nutrition. And sometimes if you're on things like antibiotics, especially if you're on them for a longer period of time, or antacids, some people will use antacids for years at a time. Long-term use of some of those medications can actually kill the bacteria in the gut and decrease the absorption of certain nutrients like B12. And so when you've had a lot of imbalance for a long period of time, if you've had a pretty poor diet for a period of time, or if you're on these longer term antibiotics, then your microbiome can be really out of whack. That's when using pre or probiotics can help to reinstitute a good microbiome. So there are things that are out there as far as pre and probiotics, but much of it you can get just in the healthy foods that you eat. So what are some of those foods? Well, probiotics and prebiotics, you can get that from food that is fermented. So there's a lot of new things that you see out of the market these days, kimchi and miso. You see kombucha, those are all really helpful. Sauerkraut actually is another fermented food, and yogurt. Eating those types of foods can actually help to repopulate and reset our microbiome. So those are natural ways that you can go about it. One of the supplements that I use right now is called Provitalize, and it has the probiotics in it as well. So I'm in the process myself of trying to improve my gut health. And so I am using probiotics, but it's not something that you need to use if you're eating a healthy diet. And as long as you haven't had long-term use of antibiotics or antacids or other types of medication that can really decrease the absorption of nutrients and kill off certain of the bacteria in the gut. There are a lot that are out there. They certainly wouldn't hurt you to take them. Again, it's not something that, if you just take those probiotics, everything's going to be fine, or those prebiotics. Best for you to get it actually in the foods that you're eating every single day. And it's really about how you're eating over in the long term. It's not having, processed food one day. If you want to go and have those donuts, go and have a donut at Dunkin' Donuts for fall, apple cider time, and it's not going to help hurt you. It's what you do on a daily basis. So just good nutrition with complex carbohydrates, fruits and vegetables, a real good balance of foods, and making sure it's a very colorful thing. The other thing too is looking at your animal protein. If you're eating, animal protein 3, 4 times a day, that's probably more than you need to. Using a plant-based diet and more of a plant-based diet can be very helpful for your gut health just in general, as well as just your overall health. And so, again, those are things that it can really help. Healthy fats. There's a lot of healthy fats that are out there that are great for your body. Avocado, olive oil, olives, all of those things are just excellent. Coconut oils are good for you in smaller amounts, but can lead to some digestive problems as well. And one of the questions that I saw come, how do you know when you have an imbalance of your bacteria? Well, a lot of people will complain of having irritable bowel or a lot of gas or a lot of bloating, feeling nauseous after eating certain types of foods. And then again, just have more inflammation in their body. And that's generally a sense that maybe something's not quite right. And you really have to ask yourself, how is my diet contributing to what I'm eating? Um, Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, you want to build that healthy gut, and it's what you do over a long time. Um, oh, one of the questions came, what if you cannot eat fermented foods due to allergies? I guess it depends on which kind of allergy. There's a lot of different types of fermented foods that are out there. So I think it's finding the one that works for you. Um, so it might be that you can't have things that are high in soy, like miso, um, maybe because you have a gluten allergy or soy allergy, but you may be able to do quite well with eating yogurt. And also and there are also yogurts that are out there that either soy or coconut. So there's a variety of different things that are on the market now that they didn't used to have. And there's also kombucha, which can be quite good if you can get over sort of the acidy taste of it at first. I had to start mixing it with things at first. Yep. So there are things that are out there that don't have soy in it. So sauerkraut doesn't have soy in it. You can see fermented cabbage doesn't have soy in it. The kombucha does not as well. Kefir is another one that's out there on the market that you can find in the yogurt area that can be very helpful for you as well. And allergies can be a sign. So when I was in my mid 40s, I actually was eating more plant-based foods. I was eating a lot of soy. I thought, how great for me. I'm helping to keep the planet sustainable. I'm doing good things for my body too. And then I started feeling really sick, and I found that I was gluten sensitive. And so I cut out gluten from my diet for about a month and then started adding it back, and I couldn't add it back. So I'm gluten free at this point because I can't handle those particular proteins in my body and I tend to react to them. And I've also found out since then I'm also intolerant to soy, cow's milk, and egg whites, which I absolutely love. And it really bummed me out because a lot of these things were the foods that I was eating all the time. But then I also reminded myself that I was under a lot of stress, not getting the 7 to 8 hours of sleep I needed, and probably not following enough mindfulness activities. So these are the things that are really important for all of us on a long term. Getting that healthy diet and trying to think of what are those things that I need to power up my body and keep it as healthy as well as possible. Exercise is important too, because that's also going to help your body use the different chemicals that you're bringing in, the nutrients that you're bringing into your body. It helps with stress. It reduces your stress. It keeps your body strong. It helps with insulin resistance. It helps with inflammation. It helps with your cholesterol levels. It's really good for us to think about exercise. And it can just be movement, walking 10,000 steps a day, just walking, just moving in any way, shape, or form, and mindfulness. So when we talk about mindfulness, making sure that we're present, helping to reduce our stress, and 7 to 8 hours of sleep is really, really important for us too. That restorative time to help our building blocks in our body be absorbed, be broken down, and be placed into the cells and used in order to power up our body and keep it functioning at the highest level possible. Next slide. So again, those prebiotics, that diverse range of food, and diversity is really key. Lots of color, lots of fruits and vegetables, lots of complex carbohydrates. You want to get sources of those good bacteria, the bifidobacterium. You can get these things like in apples and artichokes, blueberries, almonds, pistachios. And then, as I mentioned, those fermented foods increase your lactobacilli and they decrease the enterobacteriaceae. Those are the less helpful bacteria. So yogurt, sauerkraut, kombucha, kefir, all of those things can really help. Really just make your microbiome as healthy as possible. And then when we talk about mindfulness and stress reduction, meditation, even if it's just walking meditation, even if it's just for 3 to 5 minutes a day, or taking a couple of nice deep breaths, that alone can just really settle your body, just bring you back to your current place. And yoga is really good for your body as well. Keeps you strong, keeps you flexible, helps you reduce your stress. Expressing gratitude and attitude are really connected. So when you're expressing your gratitude, helps with a positive attitude, and it can just really improve your day. Being out in nature, and as I mentioned, moving, just walking and being present wherever you are is just really important to help with that stress reduction, which does impact our bodies and our microbiome. Next slide. And it's really important to understand that if you haven't been treating your bodies that well, if you've been eating a lot of animal fat, a lot of animal proteins, a lot of processed food and sugar, it can take a while for things to get back into play. So those probiotics can help to restore the gut microbiome, but they really should be for short-term use, a couple of weeks, and then it really should be more on the daily diet and exercise that you take into your body. So I see at this point we have a number of questions, so I'm just going to look to see what some of those questions are. Recommendations for decreasing bloating after consuming fermented foods. So with fermented foods, it can sometimes cause some bloating. Again, that's a short term. You'll generally see that if you're eating those fermented foods, just like decreasing the amount that you're having at any one time and start slow and then add up over time, your body will get more used to it and your right types of bacteria will start to grow back and you'll be able to handle those fermented foods a little bit better. So start slow, start, just a small amount. With kombucha or kefir, you can always water those things down and then increase it over a little bit of time. A poor biome does impact B12. That's very, very true. If you're killing off certain of your bacteria, you're not absorbing the B12 that you need to. So even if you're getting it into your diet, your body's not able to absorb it in a way that is beneficial. So that's where the microbiome is really important. So making sure you're getting plenty of good B12, but also making sure that your biome is supporting the absorption of that B12 into your body. So you might need actually a little bit extra B12 for a short period of time if your microbiome has been off. And B12 is something that is used for energy, but it's also very important for it is for energy, but it's also very important for our immune systems and also for our nervous systems. It helps our nervous systems and the chemicals in our nervous system work better. So the brain and the nervous system needs those healthy fats, also needs the B12 and other proteins as well, and nutrients. Do I recommend removing the skins from almonds? I've not seen that as being a problem in the past. I know that you can get both. Most of the time you'll see the skinned almonds being used in like almond slices and all. But that would be something I would have to look up to see if there's any issues with that specifically. There are people that do have almond allergies or the tree nuts. That can be a problem sometimes.